Feeling abandoned, left alone, it's a huge emotion that's tough to describe. Sometimes we don't even recognize it, but it impacts how we connect with others, how we behave, and even how we view ourselves. But why do we fear being left behind? Where does this anxiety stem from? The answer lies deep within our minds, in the subtle whispers of our subconscious. Humans are wired to form connections. In the past, being part of a group meant survival. Being isolated could spell trouble, and this primal instinct still lingers in our minds today. Nowadays, being physically solitary might not be life-threatening, but experiencing emotional abandonment, missing out on love, attention, and support triggers our survival instincts. Our subconscious takes this seriously. Our early bonding experiences, particularly with our mothers, shape our perceptions of love, safety, and danger. If a child faces neglect, rejection, or inconsistent care, it leaves a lasting impact. As adults, any new relationship can stir up those old wounds. What if I'm left all alone again? This is when the fear of abandonment subtly influences a person's actions. They might become overly clingy, emotionally intense, and interpret minor signals as threats. A moment of indifference from a loved one sparks anxiety. The mind starts creating false narratives. They're losing interest. I'll be abandoned. For some, the fear is so deep that they self-sabotage the relationship, opting for control over vulnerability. The subconscious mechanisms behind this fear are intriguing. The brain doesn't always bring trauma to the forefront, but it embeds it into patterns. Why do people repeat the same toxic relationship patterns? Why do they attract similar partners? Why does "I always get abandoned" become a recurring theme? The answer lies in the unconscious cycle of repetition. The brain, in its quest for resolution, keeps replaying the trauma until it's confronted and healed. Hence, the fear of abandonment isn't just an individual issue, it's a shared wound. Many in society have never experienced secure, loving attachments in childhood. These individuals often develop insecure attachment styles, avoidant, anxious, or disorganized. All these styles echo the silent plea that says, "Please don't leave me." Understanding the fear of abandonment is the first step to overcoming it. It demands courageous introspection. What moments from our past made us feel unloved or isolated? Who failed to provide the affection we craved? Answering these questions truthfully sheds light on the darkest corners of the subconscious. And within that darkness, we may realize we were never truly alone. Our fears are a part of the human experience. In the upcoming section, we'll delve into how this fear manifests in relationships, the psychological framework of dependent bonds, and the emotional turmoil of those who sacrifice their identity to avoid being left behind. The worry about being left alone doesn't just stay by itself. It likes to have some company. And usually it finds that company in relationships. What starts as a desire for love, safety, and connection slowly turns into a battleground of anxiety, emotional neediness, and hidden scars. When we carry around unresolved abandonment issues, our relationships aren't just partnerships anymore. They become battlegrounds where our subconscious tries to fix what was broken a long time ago. At first sight, it might seem like love. Two people meet, connect deeply, and form a bond. But for someone haunted by the fear of being abandoned, that bond quickly becomes a lifeline, not because of love itself, but because of the terrifying thought of losing it. The relationship becomes less about being together and more about not being left alone. This small but significant change creates a fragile base. Let's see how this fear silently creeps into relationships. Someone with abandonment scars might become overly attentive, even obsessive. They analyze every word, interpret every silence, and fear any delay in response. A missed call triggers them. A short message implies detachment. The subconscious starts creating its own story. I'm not good enough. They'll abandon me. Just like before. To avoid that imagined loss, many people bend over backward. They give up on their needs, values, and identity just to keep the other person close. If I'm perfect enough, quiet enough, loving enough, maybe they'll stick around. This isn't love. This is fear pretending to be loyalty. Ironically, that same fear can push them away. Some individuals ruin their relationships before anyone can leave them. They act distant, dismissive, or controlling. It's a defense mechanism. I'll walk away before you do. Whether it's holding on tightly or pushing away, the fear of being abandoned is calling the shots. Psychologists refer to this pattern as anxious preoccupied attachment or fearful avoidant bonding. These behaviors aren't accidental. They stem from early attachment issues. When a child grows up with inconsistent caregivers who sometimes show love, sometimes ignore them, their brain learns a harmful lesson. Love isn't secure. People walk away. Trust no one completely. This leads to adults who crave intimacy desperately, but panic when they start getting too close. We often hear about emotional neediness, but few truly grasp its meaning. It's not just wanting someone, it's needing them to survive emotionally. Without that person, they feel hollow, worthless, or even in danger. They start depending on their partner for constant validation, identity, and purpose. The relationship turns into a crutch, a fix, a temporary escape from the deeper pain. In relationships, emotions run high but can also be shaky. Small things can spark arguments. One person might always want closeness while the other craves space. This tug-of-war creates a harmful cycle. The more one pursues, the more the other retreats. Both are not just reacting to each other, but also to their inner child crying out, "Please don't leave me again." Sometimes this pattern turns toxic. The fear of being alone can lead individuals to endure mistreatment, betrayal, or apathy. They might think, at least they're still here. If they go, I'll fall apart. So they stick around not out of love, but out of fear. And fear should never be the basis of any relationship. One of the saddest outcomes of abandonment fear is losing oneself. People start giving up their hobbies, opinions, dreams, even their own voice, just to feel secure in the relationship. Their identity blurs. They're no longer an individual in a relationship, but a ghost trying to avoid being left behind. But this fear doesn't only impact romantic ties. It surfaces in friendships, family dynamics, and even workplaces. The dread of rejection or not fitting in can lead someone to be overly accommodating, a people pleaser, or emotionally reactive, all in a bid to secure connection. So how do you break free? It all starts with awareness. Understanding how fear influences your responses is the initial step. Ask yourself, do I freak out when someone pulls away? Do I feel worthless without constant approval? Do I stay in relationships even when they harm me? These questions may be uncomfortable, but they're crucial. Healing abandonment wounds isn't about fixing others. It's about rediscovering yourself. You need to reconnect with the parts of you that felt unloved, unseen, or rejected. You must learn to be the safe haven you've always longed for in others. Therapy, journaling, inner child work, and somatic practices are potent tools in this journey. Rewiring the subconscious takes time. Yet, every step away from fear and towards self-reliance is a step towards liberation. Remember this, you are not your fear. You are not your past. You are not someone who has to beg for love to survive. You were always deserving of staying, even when others failed to see it. In the following section, we'll explore the emotional defenses the mind constructs to shield itself, the masks we put on, the roles we assume, and the hidden beliefs that influence how we connect or disconnect from others.